So is there any place that sells like
Yeah,
wine
there's
skins?
there is a you can kind of think of it as a in camp store. It is not very high quality, but alcohol is something they have in abundance.
I was about to say that, like, out of character, you probably would know that that purify water thing could also help them with their jobs.
Maybe if they're smart.
Yeah.
We'll see though. All right. So do you just want to buy a bottle of wine, or do you want something cheaper?
Like a wineskin or yeah, bottled wine, whatever. It's like the cheapest form of like a container of alcohol.
If you want a whole container, the cheapest would probably be just a wine bottle. You can get that for 12 brass in this camp.
Okay, I'll take it.
Okay. All right, so you purchase a bottle of wine, and you can head off to see them at any time.
All right. Say to Verve.
I'm gonna be back.
When do you think we're ready?
I'll nod and I will wander in first.
All right, I'll fall behind her.
All right, the two of you walk in, and thankfully, there's no one else in there at the time. You do see a couple of beds. Some are on the ground, some are up on tables. You notice that some of the ones on tables are like very, very nice and have like clean cloth down and all this stuff, but not the ones on the ground, not so much. There are all sorts of sharp instruments around the room. You see a lot of threads for sewing, or more than likely stitches, and all sorts of strange various implements and a lot of bottles containing who knows what. And in the room is one man who is essentially wearing butcher's garb, and he notices the two of you walk in and immediately starts putting on, or he notices Verve walk in and immediately starts putting on gloves and says, "All right, what's it this time?"
I will, as I enter, I will take off my hood, so I'm more visible.
All right.
And I will say, "Are you available for some light mending?"
He pauses, he looks at you and sort of nods, and then looks down, and then he looks back up in a double take, and he kind of not so subtly as he probably thinks he's being, reaches for what looks to be the closest thing you could probably describe to a bone saw, and says, "Oi, now, are you employed here?"
I am.
He nods and said, "What's the name of the head of this camp?"
Lord Silverhand.
No, the other one.
What is it? I didn't write it down. That guy that gave us the gruff commands.
Sir Rolf.
Yeah, that guy. Sir Rolf.
Okay. He nods slowly and slowly puts the bone saw back down, and he says, "I've never worked on one of your kind before. I can't guarantee the best results. You don't need surgery, do you?"
No, just a few stitches here, where I was hit earlier today. And my companion was also struck by an arrow earlier today. Both
Walk in at that point.
He nods and says, "Oh, yes, I could do that. I'm Dr. Detliv, by the way."
Dr. Detliv, nice to meet you.
He chuckles and says, that's what they always say at first." And he gestures for the two of you to sit on a table.
I take a seat.
Alright, he walks over and rolls up his sleeves as he finishes strapping on his gloves and says, "Alright, payment is always up front. It's gonna be 6 shillings for..." Well, he looks at the elf for a moment and says, I'll do 4 shillings for you. This is an interesting opportunity, but it's 6 for Arrow Boy.
I will look at him and say, I heard you enjoy stories. Perhaps I could lower the cost with some of mine?
He pauses for a moment and kind of strokes his chin and he says, what kind of stories?
You are looking at an elf that has been struck by lightning more times than she should have. I could tell you about one of those times, and to kind of prove it, I will show off the crawling scars that like a lightning bolt has left on me.
Remind me what parts of your body are covered by lightning scars?
Just about every.
Okay. You notice that his eyes light up as he goes, oh, fascinating. I've always wondered what would happen to a living body struck by lightning. I mean, we've had soldiers struck by lightning in a few incidents, but I can quite confidently say they're not still walking around. He pauses for a moment and he says, all right, I'll say 2 silver with the story and a full body examination.
A full body minus certain bits, sir.
He sort of makes a motion and goes, all right, but only very certain bits. I need to take measurements of all the scars.
I will nod.
And then he turns to Vertstat and he sort of looks at your somewhat peculiar haircut and all of your iconography and says, you look like a wizard.
You have a keen eye, and I hear you also have a keen ear for stories.
He crosses his arms and says, I doubt it'll top the lightning story, and I can't give all the discounts.
This is a story for you that you can share with your friends. It's a story that has happened to you. Are you interested?
He looks a little unamused, but doesn't try to stop you.
All right, I will pull out the bottle of wine, uncork it, take a sniff, and then hand it to him and say, here, you have a bottle of wine. Can you certify that, sir?
He sniffs it and makes kind of turns his nose up at it because it is very cheap wine, and then hands it back to you and says, technically, I suppose that's wine, yes.
All right, I will say, and one moment, and I will make some elaborate hand motions over the bottle of wine, and then I will cast Purify Water.
Oh, just.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
Oh yeah, but you miscast. Hooray! Alright, so first thing that happens that we're going to do is the miscast.
D100?
Yes. $87. Double trouble. The effect of your... Oh, okay, that's dumb. Roll 1d10. Seven. Someone within 7 miles gets very upset as a very good drink they were about to enjoy turns into water.
That's very thematic, though.
I mean, it's good water, but they're still very upset. It may or may not have consequences for you later, but it's unlikely a high consequence.
Gotcha.
If you're gonna accidentally cast a spell twice, that's definitely a spell to choose.
Nice. All right. So the spell goes off then.
Okay.
I will take another sniff of the cheap wine that is now water. Take a sip, and then say, "Now it is refreshing water that I have here." Here, and I hand it back to him.
He takes it from you, skeptically, and then he looks at it, and then he takes a drink, and his eyebrows go up, and he says, "So you do this, not the skin."
Correct, not the skin. This was a story of someone turning wine to water before you.
He drinks the water again and says, "This is a lot better than the piss water that we normally get to drink. He puts the cork back in and says, "Tell you what, you bring me another one of these with clean water in it, and I'll reduce the price down to 3."
Very well.
He points at you and says, "Before I fix you, I'm gonna fix the elf first."
All right. So
All right.
I go and get another one.
Okay. Verve, he applies some bandages. It does take a while, as he does very diligently measure all of your scars. And you note that he's definitely measuring a lot of aspects of your different proportions to that of humans, and is definitely making a lot of notes, even though you can't even read his notes. They're so scribbled, and you get the point that this guy is probably a very learned man, because the way he writes is so fast and so jarbled that it must be because he's used to listening to really long lectures and having to write insanely quick. That being said, he doesn't waste too much of your time, but he does get you all patched up to full health. And you feel moderately to incredibly dirty because a human has just touched you a lot.
Oh, don't worry, I plan to have a bath. But while he's taking notes and stuff, I will kind of recount the first the first and second time I was struck by lightning. Because the first time it wasn't really me struck by lightning; it was more my mother was struck by lightning.
He nods absentmindedly, but as every once in a while, when he seems to like let out a "ooh," or "that's interesting" or "fascinating," he occasionally, you hear him mutter something along the lines. He'll usually mutter something along the lines of, "Ha ha! Just wait till Henrik hears about this. I got the bastard." But he doesn't seem to comment on it further.
Okay.
That being said, once he finishes up, he stashes away a pretty solid pile of papers. And by this point, Verstat, you will have had plenty of time to go purchase another wineskin and bring it back if you want to get a discount.
Yes, please.
Okay.
How many wounds do I get back?
You're at full.
Oh, nice.
So do I get the impression that he's more interested in my clean water or the display?
He seems much more interested in the clean water.
Okay, then I will just do the spell as I'm leaning up, going into the building.
You sure?
No. All right, I'll walk into the building.
Okay.
I have the water bottle.
Hey, I got your Ozarka here.
Yeah, exactly. I have the wine bottle, and then I cast Purify Water on it.
Okay, I'm back. When did freaking Verstad become a delivery boy for?
I will re-roll it.
Okay. When he didn't want to be in horrible agony. All right. So you successfully purify a second wineskin and hand it over to him, and he eagerly accepts it and agrees to charge you 3 silver to get you all patched up.
Okay.
All right, and after that, he does an excellent and proficient job of bandaging you up, tutting about your arrow wound, and muttering under his breath that you might be better off investing in spells that let you not get shot instead of magic parlor tricks that turn wine into water. But what does he know? Before kicking you out, but you're back to full health.
Nice.
And I will immediately seek a place to wash.
Okay. By this point, nightfall's coming down, and it's almost
Going to bed.
It's nearly time for dinner, but just when everyone is pretty much getting ready to arrive into camp, all of you hear people shouting outside, and there's the unmistakable sound of a very large animal galloping towards the war camp.
Verstadt will start making his way towards the center of the camp.
From y'all in the center of camp definitely don't, none of you in the camp hear the horse galloping part, but Drek, you definitely cannot fail to notice it, because when you actually see him, his horse he has some of the most ridiculous looking armor on him and his horse you've ever seen on a creature outside of Norska itself, when creatures would mutate into bright, vivid colors.
Like, are there like feathers coming from his helmet and all sorts
Nah.
of stupid Bretonian shit?
He's not quite that fancy.
Okay.
But he does have very outlandish armor compared to what you've seen, especially because, as far as you're concerned, he's basically thrown a virtually useless large sheet over his horse for some reason. But his coloration is a mix of black and red. But as he comes riding...
Nope, this human's just a moron. I don't know what this is.
Yeah, you've never seen this before. But he does come riding in. But the other thing you notice, and any of you who see him as he arrives inside the camp notice, is that tied across the back of his horse is a huge wild boar that is super dead. And as he comes riding into camp, a lot of people start calling out, "Oh, Raymond's back! Raymond's back!" And everyone seems pretty thrilled about his appearance. And Drac, as you're walking away from the Norscan dwarves, you notice that even the dwarves seem chattery when he appears, and they seem to be pleased by his return.
You said he has a boar behind him?
Tied on his horse. It's a dead boar, but yes. It's a big boar, too.
He went hunting. Clearly. Drac makes a note of the seemingly competent human, though weirdly flamboyant, and continues moving.
Alright. As he rides into camp, two very, very miserable looking creatures that y'all saw outside of camp that you remember are technically human, despite their haggard appearances, come running in after him. And as he almost leaps off his horse onto the ground, he starts talking to many of the soldiers around him. And he does have a very peculiar accent. Verv, you're the only one that's heard Bretonian accent before.
And I stay away.
That being said, he gets his horse quickly handed off to the two that take it to a kind of a makeshift stable area out back, out front rather. And the boar is quickly hauled off by a few of the bloody hounds to the kitchen, where you receive the great surprise wrist of a massive, rather gamey, but very healthy looking and juicy looking boar being delivered, hopefully for that night's dinner. And with your earliest success levels, you will be more than capable of prepping it.
Ooh, that'll be fun.
But as he dismounts, he goes and talks to Rolf for a bit.
How often do we eat whole boars?
Maple looks at you and goes, "Well, never, to be honest. I don't know where that came from. Probably Riemann's doing." Sir Riemann. My apologies. You can't call him just Riemann. It has to be Sir Riemann.
Who's that?
Oh, some poncy horse rider from down way south. One of them boyish heroes from across the mountains.
Mountains to the south.
Say again?
Oh, across the mountains.
Yeah, he nods and goes, "Yeah, no,
Long way to ride to just end up here.
you know, the dainty land over there where they drink all the wine all the time, and they don't have nearly, there's a good reason halflings from the moot don't tend to cross the, Grey Mountain Pass. Those Bretonians. No respect for proper halfling folk." In any event, as Raymond is speaking with Rolf,
Well, we get took the boar.
Rolf does start looking around, and Verv, are you just kind of hanging among the crowd?
Oh, no. I am gone. I'm like, I want to stay as clear of this Bretonian as I can.
Okay. After a while, the two of them finish discussing, and Riemann heads back to a very, heads back to deal with his, oversee the horse situation. If y'all want, any of you are free to talk to him or do whatever at this point, but you've got, like, just a little bit before essentially food gets sent out, and then you will be sent to sleep. Going once. Going twice. Oh.
I will say to Verv, what do you think of that?
Verv?
He's Bretonian?
Verv, you will...
vanished.
Verv,
Oh,
you
she's
will...
gone. Okay.
Yeah, Verv, you will need to ask around if you want to figure that out.
Okay.
You do not see... Unless you want to just, like, throw yourself in the well in the center of the camp. But
Okay.
that would likely be a poor decision. Especially if you intend on bathing in the traditional manner.
Succeeded.
Okay. You're asking around the soldiers?
Yeah, I'll ask around the soldiers where's the like nearest clean body of water.
You ask around. Let's see. You ask around for a bit, but a lot of them don't really seem to have much in the way of helpful information. Most of them seem to agree that the nearest source of clean fresh water is probably a stream about a day to half a day back the way you came.
Mm.
Out of character, that the one that Hans got kidnapped by?
Probably.
Alright, so I guess the next thing to do is just to draw water from the well and take it and use it to clean myself.
Okay.
So I will do that.
As you approach the well, Rolf will see you, and he will start heading towards you.
I will stop.
Okay. As he makes it within talking range, he says, Raymond's here, so you need to report in.
Wait. I'm supposed to report to him.
I told you you'd be one of Raymond's hunting hounds.
Her eyes will kind of go wide as it kind of clicks in her head, and she will say, "That is not a good idea."
Hey,
Bretonians and my kind are, if you don't know, at odds most of the time.
he glares at you and he goes, "Yeah,
And I've
well,
been told by Silverhand to make sure I don't get into trouble in the camp. This would most certainly spell trouble."
He points at you and he says, "Yeah, well, guess what? My age and my nuts don't get along either, and yet we have to deal with it. You either are going to be looking for trees, or you're going to be hunting for Riemann. You get to pick one."
I will, I need a coin.
Could always just walk into Silverhand's tower and ask if he has a job so you don't get into a fight with the Bretonian.
Is that an option?
It could be, I don't know.
I will nod and say, if I cannot acquire another job from Lord Silverhand, then I will go talk to Raymond.
Rolf's eyes narrow and he says, "Did you not hear me earlier, pointy ears? I said I'm in charge of this here camp."
I nod.
He points a finger at the tower and says, "Silverhand's got way better things to do than entertaining some crisis of some dainty, tall, long-limbed freak. You get 2 choices, you pick 1. Most people that come in here only get 1. But I decided to give you 2 because I know being a girl here can be a little hard.
I will smile and say, certainly. But I will walk towards Raymond.
Rolf will watch you chewing on whatever god-awful nonsense he chews on. He doesn't seem to care particularly one way or the other, but he does seem interested in making sure that you actually go all the way.
Damn it. I was really hoping he'd, lose. Go back and sit down so I could just circle around.
He ain't stupid.
Alright, I will walk out the gates. And...
You do see Drac there in case something goes bad.
I will kind of wince at Drac. But I will round, I guess, this wagon in the corner and kind of make myself stand as tall as I can. And I will say, are you Sir Raymond?
He says, one second, as he's, you notice very, very gently and tenderly, tending to his steed. That being said, the 2 peasants next to him, one of them, turns to greet you, and the moment he looks at you, he stumbles backwards and makes a peculiar sign over his chest and he says, "Gods preserve us! They followed us here!"
I will lower my gaze away from the poor human and say, "I was sent to be a tracker for you."
He's
Sir Rolf of the camp.
He seems he's pale and basically falls over, more than likely due to his poor composition. And you hear some laughter from the guards behind you, but this does get Reeman's attention enough that he turns around and he lays eyes on you. And the thing that you notice about Riemann is he is very young. Based on his looks, even with all of his fancy armor and his fine sword and nice mail, you would guess at best he may be 20, but is probably younger. It's hard for you to tell with humans, but he is basically a glorified child. But he does have, there is a very strong air of strength, but also certainty around him. That being said, when he does lay eyes on you, they kind of jump open for half a second, but then they sort of narrow back down, and he kind of waits for a moment, and then
I will quirk an eyebrow as I wait.
He sort of nods to himself, and he frowns down at the attendant who fell and says, "Guy, get up! Get back to work, you oaf!" And he sort of lazily kicks the man in the shin, who sort of rolls and starts crawling away. And Riemann shakes his head in annoyance more than anything else before approaching you, and he says, "I am Sir Riemann Perquin. And you are..."
Verve.
He nods kind of slowly and says, "There's no doubt from that accent, you're one of the Fey folk, aren't you?"
I am indeed. If that is a problem, I will get out of... I will leave your presence so that I don't offend you further.
He raises a hand to kind of cut you off, and he says, "There is no need. I am not threatened by you. And you said you are here to trek?"
Yes.
He nods and says, "I know none better that can find prey than one of your kind. Wolves that walk on 2 legs, just as bloodthirsty and seemingly with as good as senses. You'll make an exceptional hound, I think."
I will wince at being called a hound.
He sort of nods to himself, thoughtfully, and strokes his very, very cleanly shaven, nearly perfect chin, and says, "Yes, I think this will be a good partnership. You can witness all of my glories and go back and tell your people about them. That way, when I return home, they will know not to come and mess with my kingdom the way they did with my father's."
I will nod slowly, but I won't say anything.
He nods, and he steps towards you, and he almost holds out his hand, and then he, like, stops, and then he almost makes another weird gesture, and then he stops again, and he seems kind of unsure of himself for half a second before he just sort of sticks his hand out in your direction.
I will look at the hand, and then look at him, and raise another eyebrow.
He will progressively begin to frown, but he doesn't back down.
I will ask him before I reach out a hand to shake. What is it? Do you have any other trackers in your that serve with you? Or am I the only?
He frowns and says, "You should know to respect the order your betters want to see things go in before speaking."